The U.S. Coast Guard conducted a Port Access Route Study, or PARS. The PARS identified 4 areas of concern. They are heightened risk of collision between fishing and commercial vessels, vessels transiting near areas of special biological significance, co-occurrence of whales and ships, and compliance with Rule 10 International. This diagram shows the revised traffic separation schemes. Much fishing occurs in the Pacific Ocean area outside San Francisco's Golden Gate, in and around the San Francisco traffic separation schemes. Specifically, the areas on either side of the northern and southern lane extensions are identified as popular groundfish, crab, albacore, and salmon fishing areas. With the old TSSs, the fishing community was concerned about vessel traffic entering and exiting the traffic lanes, especially in the fog. In 1986, there was a deadly collision between a fishing trawler and a deep draft tanker just outside the northern TSS. The 1986 collision was an example of the risk fishing vessels face when ships depart the TSSs and set various courses, or when ships approach the offshore TSSs from any conceivable compass angle. This diagram shows the revised traffic separation schemes. In the VTS San Francisco offshore area, there are 4 areas of special biological significance located near the San Francisco traffic separation schemes: Duxbury Reef and Double Point, Point Reyes, and the areas of special biological significance near the Farallon Islands. United States government regulations prohibit operating any vessel engaged in the trade of carrying cargo within 2 nautical miles of any area of special biological significance. As shown here, the area off of Point Reyes, shaded in green, is one of the 4 2 nautical mile area of special biological significance cargo vessel restriction zones outside San Francisco Bay. As this overlay shows, the seaward end of the old northern TSS overlapped the cargo vessel restriction zone off of Point Reyes, and the seaward end of the old western TSS passed very close to the cargo vessel restriction zone around the southeast Farallon Islands. This diagram shows the revised traffic separation schemes. Here we add in red line overlays showing Cordell Bank's 100-meter depth contour line and the continental shelf break along the 200-meter depth contour line. These depth contour lines are important because the endangered blue whale, the humpback whale, and fin whales are sighted year-round along the continental shelf break near Cordell Bank and south of the Farallon Islands. The National Marine Fisheries Service identifies vessel strikes as one of the threats that could impede the recovery of several endangered whale populations, including the blue, humpback, and fin whales. The old northern and western traffic lanes flared out at their seaward ends and stopped short of these whale migration routes. Many outbound ships departed the old TSS at Point Reyes, then turned directly toward Cordell Bank. Add to that the inbounders approaching the old northern TSS from Cordell Bank, and those going along a more coastwise orientation, and clearly the deep draft footprint over this environmentally sensitive zone was huge. For the old western TSS, north-south oriented deep drafts often ran along the continental shelf while lining up to approach and depart. East-west oriented vessels approached and departed from the dramatically flared seaward end of the old western TSS. The breadth of these approach and departure angles represents a deep draft footprint that overlays much of the highest density whale migration areas. This diagram shows the revised traffic separation schemes. These are the old TSSs. In the navigation rules, Rule 10 International describes behavior of vessels operating in and around IMO-endorsed traffic separation schemes. Within such TSSs, vessels engaged in fishing, vessels less than 20 meters in length, and sailing vessels shall keep out of the way of vessels following the traffic lanes. However, in the open ocean waters outside the old TSSs, the opposite is often true. The big ships that were earlier following the TSSs and afforded the privileges of Rule 10 International must now keep out of the way of vessels engaged in fishing and sailing vessels. And the fishing and sailing vessels are left unable to determine the safest way to go to stay clear of the big ships. Finally, notice that the old TSSs only covered approximately 50% of the distance ships traveled in the VTS offshore sector. Beyond the seaward ends of all three of the old TSSs, vessels' locations and routes were unpredictable. Beyond the old TSSs, fishing vessels and deep drafts competed for space in an open arena with no guidelines to help either predict the location of the other. And as you can see here, the deep draft vessel footprint was potentially enormous. Even for vessels traveling within the old northern and western TSSs, predictability was not optimal. Because of the flared seaward ends of these TSSs, vessels' track lines were 40% less predictable at the seaward ends than at the shoreward ends.